With a billion-dollar company, a multi-generational history, and a leading part in the live-action Snow White remake, Rachel Zegler was slated to be Disney's next great thing. However, that fairy tale ended up being a total disaster. Rather of receiving acclaim, the movie was widely criticized online, failed at the box office, and is currently resting in Disney Plus's digital graveyard. And in the middle of everything, Rachel herself, who is now more well known for her terrible interviews and political tirades than for any magic she may have on screen. Let's go back a little. The issues didn't begin when the film was released. They started even before the first trailer was released. People were offended as soon as Rachel started to voice her opinions on the plot, Disney, and politics. She called the original Snow White problematic and out of date, and she did more than just criticize it. Longtime fans become tense just from that. The lead actress was openly making fun of the Foundation, despite Disney's efforts to serve nostalgia with a contemporary twist. Then there was the drama behind the scenes. It was reported that Rachel and Gal Gadot, the real Wonder Woman, did not get along while filming. According to sources, there was a stressful atmosphere on set, with personality conflicts and creative disagreements taking precedence over cooperation. Disney's promotion of the project as a social milestone, laden with catchphrases like inclusion and representation, didn't help either. In the process, real chemistry and narrative seemed to be overlooked. The harm had already been done by the time the film was released. Literally, audiences weren't buying it. Half of the theaters were vacant. The numbers at the box office were awful. Additionally, the movie had a disgracefully low viewership when it eventually made its way into Disney Plus. One of Disney's biggest recent failures was a movie that was meant to spark interest in traditional fairy tales. What about Rachel? She felt it was the ideal moment to go on a political rampage once more, rather than keeping quiet and waiting for things to calm down. She attributed her outspoken opinions to the criticism and the abrupt decline in job opportunities. She claims that she is a victim of a system that penalizes actresses for voicing their opinions. She asserted that there is a double standard in Hollywood, where women are excluded if they voice their political opinions, while males are allowed to do so. Additionally, this is not the first time she has mentioned this. But, to be honest, she isn't receiving the parts she used to, so it hit harder today. Hollywood has become unrecognizable, Rachel remarked in a recent public speech. She blamed the industry for rewarding individuals who stand up for their beliefs, ignoring diversity, and caving in to political pressure. And many people interpreted that as deflection, even though it would resonate with some. For example, she is attempting to change the narrative rather than take responsibility for her bad decisions during the Snow White press tour or how she alienated half of the audience. It reads, "I'm being silenced for caring about justice, rather than, my career took a hit because I tanked a movie." The truth is that Hollywood has never been politically neutral. Actors are constantly speaking out. People have been outspoken about their political views for decades, including Julia Roberts, Alec Baldwin, and Robert De Niro. The distinction is that they typically understand how to play the game. Rachel didn't. She challenged the system that was promoting her by stepping into the largest limelight of her career. She alienated fans rather than brought them together. She exacerbated the situation rather than remaining composed in the face of criticism. Rachel Zegler was strolling the red carpet alongside A-list celebrities and accepting screenplays from major studios during the height of her career. Right now, she is producing independent films with little budgets and few theatrical distributions. Most people won't even know about these projects because they are so under the radar. One of her current projects, which co-stars Marissa Tomei, is said to have a budget of less than $10 million. Compared to Disney-level production, there is a significant decrease. However, the lost relevance is more significant than the money. There's no buzz. The spotlight has gone out. Rachel appears to be aware of it as well. She said in a different interview that she no longer feels like she belongs in Hollywood's valued age bracket. That's an odd comment coming from someone who is only in her 20s. It sounded as though she was struggling with the possibility that perhaps she had burned too many bridges too soon. But it wasn't just age. Perhaps, while she was too preoccupied with attempting to win political fights rather than audiences, the doors she believed would always be open have quietly closed one by one. Indeed, she is correct when she claims that the industry is unforgiving, particularly to women. Hollywood's demands have always been harsh. Everything is scrutinized, including appearance, age, and conduct. However, Rachel wasn't merely a victim of the system. She fought it vigorously, called it out, and then pretended to be shocked when it spat her out again. It's a challenging industry, but it's a business nonetheless. Stars who sell seats, not controversy, are what the studios want. Her remark on Donald Trump fans was one of the most talked about incidents that ignited the outrage. "I don't want your business if you support Donald Trump," she declared. Just that statement went viral, and not in a positive manner. That remark alienated a significant portion of prospective viewers in a nation where millions of people still support him. Families who would have taken their children to see Snow White instead chose to stay at home. Boycotts were planned. On social media, clips from her interviews went viral, often out of context. To be fair, but nonetheless harmful. It turned out to be a pivotal moment. It was now personal as well as political. For many, Rachel seemed to be assaulting their truth rather than only expressing her own. And that strategy never works when your career depends on public support, regardless of how correct she thought she was. You cannot expect the audience to continue applauding after insulting half of them. It's absurd that loud performers like Pedro Pascal have maintained their jobs while saying far more outrageous things. Therefore, it is evident that politics is not the only factor. Additionally, timing, tone, and self-presentation are important. Rachel struck me as ungrateful, self-righteous, and contemptuous. And those qualities were accentuated when the movie failed. Rachel appears to be in a strange state of limbo as the dust settles. She hasn't been cancelled, but it's obvious that no one wants her, and it's worse in Hollywood. Because the momentum quickly wanes once the calls stop coming. There's always someone else waiting to replace you, another actress who is prepared to say the right things, win over the media, and grin through the bullshit until she's confident enough to talk openly. Rachel might still think that sticking up for her convictions was the correct thing to do. However, doing the right thing does not always equate to doing the wise thing in a field that is based on illusion and image. In Hollywood, Rachel's story is now being used as a sort of warning, not just about speaking up, but also about how quickly things can go wrong when you forget that people are always watching and listening. She had every benefit: a Disney lead part, a growing public presence, industry support. In an instant, the fairy tale turned grim. However, it seemed as though she was speaking against the audience rather than to them when she talked. Furthermore, people didn't want a lecture, regardless of how legitimate she thought her message was. They desired a film. They desired magic. In the entertainment industry, there is an unwritten rule that says, let the work speak first. Before attempting to influence the audience's beliefs, let them fall in love with you. The greats did just that. By first demonstrating their ability to connect, they were granted the freedom to communicate. Rachel attempted to omit that phase. She entered the spotlight with the intention of fighting, but neglected that winning arguments comes after winning hearts. And it's difficult to win back supporters once they quit supporting you. In the midst of all of this, Disney has been coping with its own consequences. The Snow White remake represented a larger identity dilemma inside the firm in addition to being a box office failure. They were criticized for stressing messaging above narrative and for advancing an intrusive agenda. Supporters felt patronized. Additionally, Snow White became the quintessential example of what occurs when Studio Vision loses touch with its audience as viewership fell throughout their streaming platform. Whether it was fair or not, Rachel had to bear the responsibility. She came to represent the film's failure and, consequently, all that many believed was wrong with Hollywood. Her politics were never the only thing at stake. It had to do with time, tone, and the idea that she spoke for a movement that valued assertions over narrative. However, it's not as if she vanished. She continues to work. Still using social media. Unapologetically political. Still. But now the energy is different. Reduce the amount of fire. More annoyance. She recently talked about the gloomy times in Hollywood, how it seems like progress is being undone, and how companies are ignoring diversity. She is obviously in pain. Disillusioned, obviously. And perhaps, beneath all the audacious claims, someone is discovering that, if you don't know how to handle it, the limelight can be blinding. Rachel's brilliance is the sad part. There was never any question about it. However, longevity in this industry is not guaranteed by talent alone. Strategy, timing, and grace. Those things are equally important. Additionally, the industry's hesitancy is reflected in the offers she is currently receiving. Little movies, restricted availability, roles that are quiet. She can refer to it as a brief setback. Some may refer to it as the consequences of an incorrectly predicted ascent. She still has time to change her direction. A comeback is adored in Hollywood, but activism alone won't cut it. Selecting parts that remind people of her initial selection will be necessary. It will require a lot of wise choices, a little humility, and some separation from the flames, because whether Rachel Zegler becomes a household name in the industry will be decided over the course of the next few years, or simply a headline from a tumultuous period in Disney's past. She may not be the subject of the camera at the moment, however, it remains in the room. She will also understand that sometimes quiet speaks louder than 1,000 tweets if she is listening. Hollywood never forgets. However, it is forgiving. Will she give them a cause too? That is the true question.